First review of the night. It is a um, well, not one we typically watch because we do tend to like watch things that are a little more lighthearted and feel good. This movie was not that.
What are you talking about, Daniel? Watching this family slowly destroy themselves by pursuing careers in wrestling at the peak of the industry. Laugh a minute.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yep. So we watched The Iron Claw, which came out in, I almost said last year, but technically 2023, so the year before last year.
Yes,
A24 movie. I want to say that it was. This seems a little bit Oscar baity.
a little. Yeah,
Did it actually win anything? I seem to recall it was at least in the discussions for it.
probably. See, three. Let's see, 39 nominations. Let's see. I don't see any. Oh no, it didn't get any Oscar nominations. I
Oh,
don't.
I'm actually a little bit surprising, but okay. Also, okay, I love IMDb's categorizations. So the categorizations they have for this one, at least the top ones, were based on real people, which tracks.
Yeah.
Wrestling, professional wrestling, masculinity, bare-chested man. Which we did see quite a bit of that in this movie.
Yes, we did. Yeah, and it kind of made me looking at Zac Efron. I'm like, either that man hit the gym for like days on end, or that was all prosthetics.
Yeah, I don't know how they did that.
Yeah,
I, I I don't know if it's all prosthetics, just because he his face looks a bit too real, if that makes sense. Like
yeah,
it is kind of startling to realize that that was the kid from the High School Musical movies.
yeah. He went from a skinny little runt to this.
A
Yeah,
slab of beef.
yeah,
So this is the story of the Von Erich brothers, who were professional wrestlers in the '80s. I'm told, because okay, I'm going to just admit this. Until I heard about this movie on Film Thread a couple years back, I had never heard of the Von Erichs.
yeah.
I am weird in some of my social circles for having never encountered wrestling at all growing up. Like I've never watched a match.
Yeah, I never really watched it myself. I did have some friends, especially in middle school, who were really big into wrestling. I never saw the appeal of it, if I'm being honest. It just seemed a little too. Um, I hate to use the words lowbrow, but it's a little lowbrow. Um, at least when I was in my teens. I was a bit of a buzzkill in my teens. I'm not gonna lie. Um, but the only time I think I ever heard of them was in my ESPN watching days. There might have been I think there was like a human interest piece on them on Sports Center one time. When they showed on a really slow news day, or
Right.
they weren't showing any sporting events.
Right. So now I haven't done any research to verify how accurate this movie was, just because, quite frankly, it's a depressing story, and I had this odd feeling that if I looked things up, like, you would realize what they left on the cutting room floor just to try to make the movie palatable.
Yeah, I wondered that too. Yeah, like were they over exaggerating it, or were they downplaying a lot of stuff? And I'm
Yeah.
I'm worried that it was probably the latter and not the former.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we follow the Von Erich brothers, and Zac Efron's Kevin. He's the oldest, and his
And
career
the point
is,
of view character.
Yeah, he's a point of view character, and we should also note that their father, Fritz von Erich, was a professional wrestler, and to say that he's the villain of the piece would be an understatement.
Right.
He's very very strict on his sons. He is wrestling is really all that matters to him, and that's he's basically he couldn't have a great wrestling career, so he's kind of living vicariously through his sons.
Yeah, the worst type of sports dad.
Yeah. And so Kevin's trying to build up his career, and he's got the athletic ability. He's got he can do all the wrestling moves and everything. But as we were talking about this before the show, he's very socially awkward, and so the other aspect of being a professional wrestler, which is the showmanship, the doing the talking, the promos, right, and all that stuff, he's not so good at that.
No, so he kind of gets sidelined, even though he's kind of the rock of the family.
Yeah. And so then what happens is his one of his brothers, his other brother, I think it was David, right? David, I think David was the one he starts wrestling with, doing tag team wrestling, and then
right.
And of course, and then he had another brother, Kerry, and what happens with Kerry is really the reason he gets into wrestling is because he was a track star. He was actually gonna be on the U.S. Olympic team in 1980, but of course that was the year the late former president Jimmy Carter boycotted the Olympics because they were in Moscow, and it was over the Soviets invading Afghanistan.
He truly was history's greatest monster.
Yes, he was.
Yeah. So Kerry gets forced out of respectable sports into the wrestling life.
Yeah.
Quick sidebar. A story I heard that I don't know if it's true or not, but it's hilarious regardless. So that line where I called Jimmy Carter history's greatest monster, it was a particular Simpsons episode where, because of plot reasons, they couldn't afford a statue of Abe Lincoln, so the town bought a Jimmy Carter statue instead. And somebody in the crowd just wigs out and goes, "He was history's greatest monster." Now, at the same time, Jimmy Carter kept being told by his grandson, "Oh yeah, Grandpa, you need to watch The Simpsons because it's so smart. It's got great political commentary." Guess what episode he happened to tune into as his first episode? Yep, the one where they called him history's greatest monster.
Ooh. Yeah, well.
But that's sorry, I had to delve into the lighter side before getting back into this.
Yeah.
So each of Kevin's brothers gets destroyed in their own awful, tragic way.
Yeah. So David, he's kind of been chosen by the old man to be the preeminent wrestling star, and then he's doing tours in Japan.
Actually, let's put a pause for a second before we get into the plot. So it's always kind of awkward to talk about the story of a based on true events movie, because there's always the question, does it really count as a spoiler if a quick glance at Wikipedia could tell you all about it?
Yeah.
And also like, if you decided you did want to watch the movie, and you were like us and weren't super well versed in the life of the Von Erichs, I feel like a lot of the punch would be taken away by knowing things. But so we'll get into the plot in a sec. Let's talk about some of the more production value-y things first.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think that this was well acted all around. I was startled to see Zac Efron actually being a good actor after having had to watch a couple of the High School Musical movies.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think if I've seen him in anything.
I think he kind of fell off the edge of the world for a bit. I remember there was some movie where he had a little brother who died, or it was a ghost or something, or he was the ghost that went to theaters around the time when
uh,
he was at peak High School Musical popularity. That I don't think the movie did especially well.
oh, I think you're thinking of was it the one with Matthew Perry?
I don't know.
Because there was one he did with Matthew Perry where he's he's like the teenage version of Matthew Perry's character, and there's some like kind of like Freaky Friday thing, and he becomes a teenager again.
Uh, well, those both sound like movies that you could end up in if you're not an especially great actor and are kind of trying to get out from under the Disney Channel shadow.
Yeah, yeah,
But in this one, he's very convincing. Like just because he comes across as this awkward man who just wants to do right by his brothers, and life and situations keep getting in his way all the time.
yeah,
Like the overwhelming feeling I think of this movie is that he never feels like he's good enough.
yeah, yeah. And even like, yeah, even when he, when he meets, his eventual wife, he's just, he's totally unaware of like, her liking him, and like, just, she kind of has to like lead him through like, okay, are you gonna ask me for my phone number now? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, sure, why not? Yeah.
sure, why not? Yeah,
It's like the idea that anybody could like him is foreign.
yeah, and that could be also be a product of his upbringing too. Um,
Yeah.
Constantly having to try to live up to his father's expectations of him.
Yeah, his father literally had rankings like, hey, right now your fourth favorite. First is Kevin, then da da da.
Yeah,
You can work your way up the ranks.
yeah, that's just yeah,
Uh, if I had a criticism of the movie, and this is me coming in not knowing anything about wrestling, why the heck am I watching a movie about wrestling outside of it being kind of a human interest piece?
mm,
It threw around some jargon. Like I don't think it ever spelled out what the name of the wrestling federation was. I think it was like National Wrestling Association or something, NWA.
yeah,
Um, so it's very realistic dialogue because it's not like if you're working at the Pentagon, well, we have United States of America troops in such and such. Like,
yeah,
you're going to use shorthand in communication.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but the other thing was, I felt like we needed a few, like at least a scene where wrestling seemed worth the squeeze, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah. Because the sense you get is that it's just it's like a rigged game, where
Right.
you know the, they're like the old man's like, oh, they're always, he was complaining about how they're all, the NWA was always screwing him, trying to find a way to screw him over, and then they're just doing the same thing to his kids, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Maybe that's just in keeping with the theme of the movie, where like I don't think that Kevin ever really liked wrestling, which is interesting for something that you spend your whole life prepping for.
yeah, I got that feeling too. Yeah, he was doing it out of obligation.
Like even his brothers seemed to actually enjoy it way more than he did. If
Yeah,
I'm so, I don't know how on point that is.
yeah,
Uh, Now, from a effects and editing perspective, very well shot. I could follow the action and all the wrestling scenes.
yeah,
Um, I enjoyed all of the retro text on the screen and like all the like when they made it look like it was the 70s or the 80s on the
yeah,
screen,
yeah,
like for the different broadcasts. And the and the fake wrestling promos and the recreated wrestling promos were kind of amusing.
Yeah, I like that too. Yeah, especially the one with Ric Flair. That one was good.
Yeah. Um, so before we get into like a little bit of spoiler talk, just to talk about our feelings about just how badly things went.
Yeah.
Um, Daniel, would you recommend this movie to somebody?
Uh, I would probably give a mild recommend. Um, if basically just you kind of have to be. It's one of those movies you have to be in the right mood to watch it.
Right, like
Um,
yeah, definitely a downer.
yeah, but it's. I mean, I would definitely watch it just from as you said, a human interest standpoint, and even from a character archetypal standpoint, which I know sounds weird given that these were all real people, but they do fit certain molds of different character arcs that you normally see. So I mean, from that standpoint, I would recommend it. Just uh, a mild recommendation. Just but yeah, like I said, you kind of have to be like you have to be it's in the right mood to watch it. Sort of like with something like Schindler's List, for instance.
Right, or Chinatown.
Yeah, yeah,
That's a good point. Even though all four of them are brothers, the writing and acting does a very good job of making each of them distinctive.
yeah,
So, which is good because you could very easily get lost with as many Von Erichs as there are running around.
yeah, yeah, and trying to keep track of who's who. Yeah,
Yep. Yeah, I think I'm gonna second your thoughts. Like mild recommend. There are definitely people who I would say, no, you're going to hate this. Don't watch it.
yeah,
But there are also people who I know be right up their alley. Like, you
yeah,
know, if you're somebody who's into wrestling, you probably already know this story a little bit, so you might
yeah.
get you might get some insight. Or who knows, maybe they flubbed the portrayal completely, and you'll just have something to complain about afterwards.
Yeah.
All right, so we put a pin in the spoiler talk earlier.
Yeah.
Man, they're each brother had such a unique and fascinating way to just have their lives ruined.
Yeah. uh, yeah. So so after the all the brothers get into wrestling and they're doing like 3-man tag team stuff, and what ends up happening is one of the brothers or okay, so when was the
It was David who I think you're
right,
thinking
Dave?
of.
Yeah. So as they're moving up the ranks, David is actually the one called up to go into the big leagues of wrestling, in the NWA. And despite Kevin having doing it the longest, and being the oldest brother, um, and so shortly after, after Kevin gets married, which I probably mentioned the actress who plays Kevin's wife.
Mhm.
Um, Lily Jones. She was the love interest in Baby Driver.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But but yeah. So shortly after they get married, David goes off to Japan for to do their the whole wrestling tour thing, and then. But well, it was actually during the wedding. He's in the bathroom, you know, puking his guts out. But then
With blood.
yeah, with blood, which yeah, that's bad. I actually had a family member who that happened to one time. He was puking
Mm.
blood. Yeah, that's not good. um but and then so when he's in Japan, he dies from a ruptured intestine.
Yep. Yeah, and that's what I meant earlier. Like, where like is the juice really worth the squeeze? These people are like literally destroying their bodies and minds
Yeah.
uh, chasing this. Um, so then the second brother to die was possibly the most tragic because you had Mike Von Erich, who was the youngest brother, and he
Yeah.
was a talented musician. And he was kind of pressured into it when David died because they needed a third.
Mhm.
And he goes out there, does his first wrestling match. I believe he broke his collarbone.
Yeah.
Yeah, broke his collarbone, and then they never actually say the words, but he goes in for surgery, has a 107-degree temperature for a few hours, is in a coma, and wakes up very brain damaged.
Yes. Yeah.
And he can no longer manage to play his instruments anymore. So he takes a whole bottle of sleeping pills, washes it down with some sort of alcohol, writes a note, and just goes to sleep out in the field and never wakes up.
Yeah. And then you also had you have Carey, who was, of course, supposed to be in the Olympics, but then he gets into wrestling, and then he finally makes it. He finally gets into the big time, and he gets the title belt and everything. Then he goes, it gets drunk, and then goes down or takes a motorcycle ride at night, and then obviously gets into a wreck and loses a good part of his leg.
Yep, and the pain just drives him so crazy forever that he eventually just shoots himself,
Yeah.
which is
And
the exact moment when Kevin finally loses it at his dad.
yeah.
That was probably the most satisfying part of the movie, where it just crawls on top of this hateful, selfish old man and just starts choking the life out of him.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, and yeah, like I said, yeah, that was satisfying, and I'm just like, about freaking time.
Yep.
He finally stood up to this guy. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the way that they ended the movie was probably about the most positive means you could have
Yeah.
to do it, which is basically, and they've been clear throughout the whole thing that Kevin does not have the same harshness in him that his dad did. And also, he just seems to be able to, maybe because he isn't too assertive, he isn't too disappointed by life when
Yeah.
things don't go his way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, he isn't like, yeah, he just knows that his role is to be a good soldier and to help the family out.
Yeah.
And so you definitely see that he's not forcing the same things upon his children.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the redemption of the movie, is that the sickness has not been spread through him.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, it was yeah, the part of the whole this the tragic aspect of it is that there's supposedly this curse on the Von Erich family.
Oh, right, yeah, on
Yeah,
the name, because
on the name.
or my grandfather changed it to his mother's name instead of his father's name, and ever since it's been the Von Erich curse.
Yeah. Yeah, because and we should also mention too that they had that Kevin actually had an older brother who died when he was a child.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so yeah, it's just um yeah, and I think you're right. Like trying to, yeah, he's able to take disappointment a lot better than his brothers, and like, yeah, like you said, he was just, he was very family oriented. I mean, you even see that in the one scene when he goes on the first date with his his eventual wife. He said, "Oh, I want to have a big ranch and have the whole family, have
yep.
everybody living there."
What do you know? That's what he ended up with.
And that's what he ended with. Yeah. Um, yeah, and uh, yeah, and that, yeah, and like you said, yeah, that's the positive thing, is that he didn't, yeah, he didn't turn out like his father, which, for a lot of, I think for a lot of men, especially, if they're in a bad family situation like that, that's always a fear with some men, is that they turn
Right,
out like their dads.
right.
Yeah.
Yep, that all tracks.
Yeah.
That So I guess yeah, we'll reiterate. Mild recommend. You have to be in the right mindset. You have to find the topic kind of interesting. Very
Yeah.
startled to see Zac Efron actually delivering a nice performance like that.
Yeah.
Also, you were mentioning that you didn't find wrestling very highbrow. How can you find a sporting organization that literally has an arena in Texas called the Sportatorium lowbrow?
I don't know. I don't know.
Sounds like a personal problem.
Yeah, I guess.